Okay, now we're going to start in on interest groups and talk about interest groups. And as always, because of the way I test, as well as you'll see my lecture notes are structured the same way, we're going to start off with a definition. Okay, so interest groups are organizations that try and shape public policy. Okay, they try and shape public policy in a specific area. Let me give you some, and whenever I do my exams, I always want you to give me a definition and then an example. And now what you can see on the lecture notes, which you should have in front of you, is that there are actually 5 examples on the lecture notes. And I want to go through each of them because some of them are more obvious, some of them are less obvious, and I want to kind of discuss this definition and give some examples. So what about the American Medical Association? Do you think that they function like an interest group? An interest group? And the answer is yes. What they'll do is they'll go to Washington, D.C., or representatives from the American Medical Association will go to Washington, D.C., and try and encourage members of Congress, and even at the state level, to go ahead and adopt policies that are going to make it easier for doctors to do what they do, whether that's making certain medicines more available, making it harder for other people to become doctors, variety of things, or making it harder to protecting them against lawsuits. There can be a variety of things that they might want the government to do. And again, it can be the federal or state level. What about the American Bar Association? Now, the American Bar Association, by the way, for some of those of you who don't know, is not the association that represents people who work in bars. It's actually the organization that represents lawyers. In order to become a lawyer, you have to pass the bar. The bar is this exam. And so they call it the Bar Association, the American Bar Association. Or do they function like an interest group? And the answer is yes. They want to go ahead and they want to affect policies as they relate to lawyers. Lawyers making money. What kind of suits can they do? What kind can they not do? What about the Tom Cruise fan club? Are they an interest group? Well, hopefully the answer is no. Hopefully that wasn't a difficult one. So let's move to the next one. This one's a little trickier. Are the Republican and Democratic parties interest groups? Well, the answer is no. If you recall, when we talked about political parties before, one of the things that I explained was that political parties, the primary goal of political parties is to take control of the government through elections. They're not just trying to shape public policy in one area. They're trying to control the whole thing. They're trying to shape all policy, right? And so we separate out political parties from interest groups because whereas political parties want to take control of the government through elections, interest groups are just interested in shaping policy in one area. So that's why we don't call political parties interest groups. We separate them. Now, the trickiest one. The Los Angeles Unified School District. Are they an interest group? Well, as it turns out, actually they are. The representatives from the Los Angeles School District, LAUSD, will go ahead and send, LAUSD will send representatives to Sacramento and to Washington, D.C. to go ahead and try and get the government, both the state government and the federal government, to spend more money in Los Angeles. So they actually go and they try and get money. They're trying to shape policy in a way that brings more money to Los Angeles. So even though the Los Angeles Unified School District is like a governmental organization, they still can go ahead and function like an interest group. As a matter of fact, the city of Los Angeles has people who represent it in Washington, D.C. and in Sacramento, trying to bring more money to Los Angeles. Now, what do interest groups do? What interest groups do is they lobby policymakers. When we say that they lobby policymakers, what does that mean? Lobby is just another word for try to influence. When they lobby policymakers, what they say, what we mean is that they're trying to influence policymakers. They're trying to get our leaders to do things that the interest group wants to get done. People who lobby, the people who do this lobbying, we call them lobbyists. Lobbyists, lobbyists. right? Those are the people who do the lobbying. A lot of times you'll hear on the news people talking about lobbyists in really negative, sort of dark, scary tones. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. But so the people who do the lobbying, we'll refer to them as lobbyists, and they represent these interest groups. Now, who do these lobbyists want to influence? Who are they trying to influence? Are they trying to influence our elected officials? Hopefully you said yes. Are they trying to influence appointed officials, people who didn't get their job through elections, but people who were appointed to go ahead and to get their jobs? Heads of different agencies within the bureaucracy that we'll talk about later on, people who are appointed to their jobs. Do they try and influence those people? Yes, they do. Do they try and influence elected and appointed officials at the federal level? Well, yes, they do. Do they try and influence people at the state level? Yes, once more. And so I'm hoping that you can guess the answer to the next one. Do they go ahead and try and influence people at the local level? Yes. Lobbyists are all over the place trying to influence policymakers at the federal level, at the state level, at the local level, trying to go ahead and get things done for their group, for the people that they represent. Now, having said that, I want to go ahead and I want to make a distinction between two different kinds of interest groups. Public interest groups and then private interest groups. So let's start off with public interest groups. What public interest groups do is they lobby in favor of policies that provide collective goods. A collective good. So what is a collective good? So again, public interest groups lobby in favor of policies that provide collective goods. Well, what is a collective good? A collective good is something that benefits everybody in society, not just the members of the group. So let me give you an example of a collective good. Suppose you're a member of the Sierra Club, right? And the Sierra Club, in case you don't know, is an organization that's committed to going ahead and providing cleaner air and cleaner water. Okay, so you go ahead and you work really hard. Every weekend you go out and you're knocking on doors and doing all kinds of things to try and convince policymakers to go ahead and clean up the air, let's say in the Santa Clarita Valley. And let's say, or the water, let's use water. So let's say the water isn't good and you work really hard to try and get policymakers to change it so that the water in Santa Clarita Valley is better. And I don't do anything. I'm just sort of sitting around. There's all kinds of other people who belong to different organizations. I might be interested in gun safety. I might be interested in all kinds of other things. Maybe I'm interested in working for one of the political parties, but you're doing your Sierra Club thing, and you succeed in getting policymakers to make the water better. Everybody benefits, not just your organization, not just Sierra Club members, but if you manage to go ahead and get it so that the water in the Santa Clarita Valley is cleaner, everybody benefits. That's a collective good. If you are able to convince them to go ahead and improve the quality of the air, everybody benefits. That's what we mean by a collective good. Now, one of the problems that public interest groups face is what's called a free rider problem. A free rider problem. And this is what I mean. So let's suppose that you're sitting there working on the weekends and all your spare time trying to go ahead and get the policymakers in Santa Clarita Valley to improve the quality of the water here in the valley. Me, I'm at home watching reruns of The Simpsons. You're like, hey, Phil, man, we should go out and we should do this, man. We could improve the water here. That'd be so much better. Everybody would be healthier. Your kids would be healthier, blah, 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 blah. You give me this whole pitch. I'm like, dude, I'm watching reruns of The Simpsons. Now, you go and do all your work. You get policymakers to change their approach. And the next thing I know, the water is cleaner. I'm a free rider. I haven't done anything. I'm just kicking back and letting you do all the work. But then if you succeed, I get to enjoy the benefit. I get to enjoy it even though you did all the work. Public interest groups have this kind of free rider problem, that there are a whole bunch of people who sit around and they don't do anything. They don't get involved. They don't sacrifice their time, but precisely because what public interest groups are trying to do is secure collective goods that everyone's going to benefit from, is precisely the reason that I can just sit back on the couch, watch reruns of The Simpsons, and still enjoy the benefit. And this makes it hard for public interest groups because it may be that I'm interested in cleaning the water, in cleaner water. The problem is I'm not willing to do anything about it, but I am willing to let you go ahead and work your ass off trying to get it done. And that's what we mean by a free rider problem. It's hard to get people to join when they know that if you succeed in getting cleaner water, they're going to benefit no matter what. Now next we're going to move to private interest groups. And that will be in interest group 0.02.